Good evening. Welcome to Elyria City Council meeting for October 16th, 2023. At this time, I'd like to take a moment of reflective silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Mitchell, would you please lead us in the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. I'd ask the audience, if you have your cell phones, to please put them on either silent or off during the council meeting. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, I have roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Callahan. Here. Mr. Sierra. Here. Mr. Oswald.
Here.
Mr. Corbin.
Here.
Mrs. Mitchell.
Here.
Mr. Tollett. Here. Mr. Lippian.
Here.
Mrs. Davis.
Here.
Mrs. Simmons.
Here.
Mr. Schneider.
Here.
Mr. Stewart.
Here.
All present.
Public hearings?
We have one. You are hereby notified that a public hearing will be held on Monday, October 16th, 2023 at 7 p.m. to consider the following. An ordinance amending Section 1131.02 Codified Ordinances of the City of Elyria, Ohio, known as the zoning ordinance, to overlay a B-G Business General District over a L-I Light Industrial District as set forth in Chapter 1176, Redevelopment Overlay District, RDOD, Codified Ordinances of the City of Elyria, Ohio, for real property located in the vicinity of Reeser Point Crossing, Elyria, Ohio, and owned by DBR Commercial Realty, LLC.
Are there any proponents? Welcome. Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Mark Craig, P.O. Box 255, Vermillion, Ohio. I am legal counsel for DBR Commercial Realty, and I'm pleased to be here before council in the next step of the collaboration between the City of Elyria and DBR Commercial Realty for the development area known as Reeser Point Crossing. We respectfully ask you for this change in the zoning, which will allow much more flexibility in the types of businesses and make this a much more attractive area for development in the future.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Craig? Are there any proponents? Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? Are there any opponents? Are there any opponents? I declare this public hearing has been held.
Sponsored by Community Development, an ordinance amending Section 1131.02 Codified Ordinances of the City of Elyria, Ohio, known as the zoning ordinance, to overlay a B-G Business General District over a L-I Light Industrial District as set forth in Chapter 1176 Redevelopment Overlay District, RDOD, Codified Ordinances of the City of Elyria, Ohio, for real property located in the vicinity of Reeser Point Crossing, Elyria, Ohio, and owned by DBR Commercial Realty, LLC.
Ms. Mitchell.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules.
Point of order 3, Mr. Chair, this is the third reading.
Pardon me, the third reading.
There's a motion made by Ms. Mitchell. Second by Mr. Sierra. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-140. That's all public hearings.
Can I get approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Sierra.
Second.
Second by Mr. Schneider. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Remarks and reports from city officials. Mayor Whitfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, city council members and residents. We've been busy these past couple of weeks working on a number of things. One of them has been some really good meetings we've had with the Elyria Police Department, preparing for our 2024 budget request, but also just having the discussions around safety in the city and some of the proposals we're going to be presenting to you all to help make our city safer. You should be seeing those in the next couple of weeks. We've also been out meeting with various companies. I want to thank you all for the joint proclamation we were able to pass. We were able to present that to Ridge Tool for their 100-year celebration, and it was great to be with all the community partners there at Ridge Tool. We also met with a company recently here in the city of Elyria that's looking to expand and is looking for land. And so a part of what we'll be, discussing with you all is some of those opportunities we have to create the right infrastructure for companies to stay here in the city of Elyria. And as always, we've been engaging with youth. I want to give a shout out to the Public Health Department who coordinated a Bike to School Day for the students, and Elyria Police Department was a part of it. And then today I got the chance to speak at my daughter's school as they learned about what the job of a mayor is, and got a chance to interact with those kids, and that's always a good time as well. But trick or treat is on Halloween Day, and we always know not everybody's going to be happy whatever day you choose for trick or treat, but we decided to just stick with Halloween from 6 to 8. So encourage residents to get out there and be safe. Turn your porch light on if you're going to be participating, and here for any questions.
Any questions for the mayor? Thank you, Mayor. Safety Service Director, Mr. Lundy.
Thank you, Mr. President. We recently held our fall preparation strategy session. We'll be launching our fall leaf collection program starting next week. We're asking that leaves be raked in rows close to, but please not in the street. And please don't mix in branches or twigs. Obviously, that can damage our equipment. Due to the unpredictable weather, of course, there's no daily schedule, but rain and snow will significantly impact the collection process, and we'll work to be as efficient as possible. We'd also like to ask that residents please not park your car in front of the area where your leaf pile is. This unfortunately could result in leaves not being collected there. I'd like to also update you, the crews from Streets and Parks continue to do regular cleanups of the square in the downtown area. They head out once a week early in the morning, gather up the leaves and debris. We're going to continue our weekly downtown cleanups through mid-November, or when the snow starts to fly. And also, work for this year has been completed to remove the graffiti from the railroad underpasses. Once the railroads gave us the green light to cover up the graffiti, we of course put the wheels in motion on that. Our vendor, True Coat, prepped the walls. They applied a fresh coat of paint, and most importantly, sealed the walls so that any future graffiti can be removed. Painting's been completed at Washington and Bridge Streets. The bridges on Washington and Broad Street near the hospital were also painted, I think, for the first time in over 16 years. Our team takes a lot of pride in Elyria, and we will continue to work to show pride in our city. That completes my report.
Just to comment on the bridges, I see the one on East Bridge Street that I can normally come down over and through. Unfortunately, obviously this with the train tracks, that the black soot or the just come streaking down over the white. That's unfortunate that that's what that is. So it's just the hard work and effort that was put in over there, right in the center of the track, is just kind of a big black streak. So I don't know what that's going to be a continuous problem, right, obviously. But any questions for the Safety Service Director? Mr. Oswald.
More a comment. We've had a little discussion about Ford Road and Gulf Road as far as some comments that I actually made the comment, we're not taking care of our city properties like I feel we should. And within a few discussions with some people at the Metro Parks going down Ford Road, finding out that a lot of the property that the city has been cutting, or maybe not doing as great a job, is actually not our property. So we're going to get into that. Since I said that, I had to drive along with Preston and Keenan with the street department, and we were addressing some of the issues and along the guardrails coming down West River. And I just, about 2 weeks ago, they went through and recut it, and it looks really good. I let them know they did a great job, and hopefully we can continue to do that, because like I've said, first off, Ford Road is one of our prettiest streets to drive, and West River is one of our inlets that comes into our city and to places that we want to make sure people are getting the good impression when they drive into our city. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. Any other questions? Very good. Finance Director Pulaski.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to let council know that the annual comprehensive financial report for 2022 is on the city's website. If you would rather me email you a copy, shoot me an email. I can send you a PDF file, but it's a roughly 260-page report. So after you look through it, if you have any questions, please contact me. Thanks.
Any questions for the Finance Director? All right. Law Director, Ms. Deary.
Good evening, everyone. I've no report. However, as always, I'm available for questions. If not now, you know where to find me. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Deary? Elyria Police Department, Chief Pelko.
Good evening. So I just want to inform everybody, I had a sergeant resign. He went to Westlake Police Department. But with that said, October 30th, we'll be hiring 2 lateral transfers that are already certified. These 2 young men will be sworn in here on October 30th at 3 o'clock. Everybody's welcome to come and join us in bringing them on to the Elyria Police Department. We apprehended our murder suspect from the shooting that happened at the Chronicle. He was located in Iowa. I'd like to give a shout out to the U.S. Marshals. They were a crucial role in locating him and finding him for us. He's currently being extradited back to our city to face his charges. Last Friday, we had a mass casualty event that was held at the Lorain County Health Department. I'm sure a lot of you are aware of it. I just want to give you a little bit brief on that. It was an active shooter situation. We had numerous fatalities, numerous simulated fatalities and injuries. It was all a training. We collaborated with the Lorain County Health Department, the Elyria Fire Department, numerous other fire departments, Life Care, numerous other ambulance services. The FBI helped us. It was a collaborative effort on all of our parts to learn what we're doing good and to learn what we're doing bad. We're having debriefings where we're going to follow up on the good and the bad and try and correct those problems that we did encounter. But I'll be more than happy to answer any questions if anybody has anything about that event, and I'm sure Chief Pernesti is probably going to talk a little bit about it as well. So,
any questions for Chief Pelko? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Your Fire Department. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Davis.
Excuse me, Chief, you know, is there any way we can let the neighbors know, because I got several calls that people was hearing this and they was kind of like scared. It's like boom, and is there any way we can get the word out? I don't know.
Yeah, so we tried to be, we were trying to do a unified, we were trying to treat this whole scenario as a unified effort and let the Lorain County Health Department run with what was going to happen and disseminate that information. They had a social media post and an email. They notified the neighbors in that area, and then we took that social media post and put it on our Facebook page as well to try and notify people. But obviously it didn't get to everybody, so that's something that we need to work on, and I'll hook up with you after this, and we'll talk about it on what better ways maybe we can get that word out when we do that again. So,
through you, Chair, we have to remember that seniors do not do social media, and we have to remember that. And so when I say someone called, I'm talking about a senior.
Gotcha.
And that's my concern. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Chief. Elyria Fire Department, Chief Pernesti.
Good evening. I'd just like to reiterate a little bit what Chief Pelko said. We've never done anything like this as far as a mass casualty or active shooter event. And we did learn a lot, and I would like to say that we're as prepared as we can be, hopefully for that. We worked well together, and we need to do more of these. To answer the question as far as getting the word out, the only other thing I could recommend, and we did do this, but I really wasn't going to mention anything until you brought this up, but we need to do a better job of getting what we call the WENS, the Wireless Emergency Notification System, which is a text message. You can sign up for free. You know, I think seniors, even seniors that may not have the social media, hopefully they're getting a phone. They have a cell phone nowadays, I would hope, or even a landline. They can sign up and they can get a recorded message. And it's not just so much to tell them we're training, but if we have the train that rolls off the tracks, it's the easiest, the fastest, the only one mass notification that we could do. So you can sign up on the city's website, county's website, but I think that would help tremendously to try to get the word out to seniors or their caregivers, their families, to sign mom and dad's cell phone up for this wireless emergency notification, so.
Mr. Tolet?
Through you, Mr. President, isn't that the system that the schools use also for school closings as well?
I don't think they use that. The city schools have a different system that we'll get phone calls from their PIO, Amy. Yeah, I don't. The WEN system is strictly, only a few people can activate it for the city of Elyria. We do road closings, we'll do water main breaks.
Okay,
If
that's
we have a
what
boil
comes
alert.
from water mains. Okay.
But see, when you sign up, what I need help with to try to get the word out is, you can do email, you can do phone call, you can do a text. So we try to cover as much ground as possible with that, so, anyway.
Mr. Schneider?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there was a sign, someone put a sign up, I don't know if it was the county or if it was the city, but there was a sign put up that said drill in the time at the corner of Leo Bull, and Murray Ridge. I thought that was a good idea for people that maybe weren't on social media or couldn't get to it.
Yeah, we did the best we could. I mean, I went to the Chronicle, I said, please give us a front page, we're doing this drill. They did, to Facebook, so we're always gonna have things slip through the cracks with this, but we had to make it real. Otherwise, the training is for naught if you don't make it as realistic as possible.
Any other questions? Thank you, Chief. Assistant Safety Service Director, Ms. Calvert.
Good evening, through you, Mr. President. I wanted to let council as well as the community at large know that today the Department of Development, the Ohio Department of Development, released the guidelines for the Building Demolition and Site Revitalization Program. So there will be $500,000 given to the county-wide, so through Lorain County. The administrator will be the Lorain County Land Bank for this program. However, there will be $500,000 in grant funds available for the demolition of commercial and residential properties that are not brownfields. So there are, they were just released today, so the guidelines are, we're still going through them a little bit, and we'll try to better understand exactly how that will flow through the county, but wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that, since it's limited funds, and it will be, you know, a timely process before those funds run out, but wanted to make sure everyone was aware. They did do a similar program a year and a half ago, I believe. We actually did have an Elyria project funded right in downtown, so that was very helpful in making that project happen. And then also there will be a separate brownfield program that the guidelines for that will be released. So we just ask that if you have a building that you're interested in demolishing or that you're aware of, that you please let me know so that I can help the building owner work through the process and try and get as much of the funding as we can.
Ms. Calvert, so I know you're just kind of getting the policy and everything like that, but was it broken down through the county, but by municipality? How is that all worked out? I mean, is it that part of, do you know that much?
I do not know how the county will be approaching it from that angle yet, so that is definitely something that we need to look into. I think one of the things that's really helpful about going through this process too, though, even if there is something that is not awarded, is that we can be looking for other funds and resources to help with these sites. So the more we know about it, the better, particularly with the brownfield sites. So it's rare that there is any funding available for demolition. So let me just say that, especially demolition that isn't contaminated. So this is a very unique program that we're excited to have as a tool and a resource in the county. So want to get the word out about that. But again, it's always helpful to know so that we can be on the lookout for other resources available.
Good. Any other questions for Ms. Calvert? Thank you. Assistant Safety Service Director, Mr. Williams.
Good evening, everyone. Through you, Mr. Chair. Just want to kind of give you an update on the status of the community violence prevention program, reduction program that we have. It's a collaboration with the City of Elyria, the City of Lorain, and it's being facilitated by the Lorain County Urban League. And it's titled Save Our Streets. And currently, we are now interviewing folks for the positions. There will be two social workers. Basically, they're putting together two different teams. One team that will work in the City of Elyria, another team that will work in the City of Lorain. Each team is equipped with a social worker, which they're now interviewing for that position, as well as what's titled a kind of a community mentor / violence interrupter. And that individual on the preventive side is engaged in community relationship development, mentoring, really getting out and trying to make the connection with folks who may be in harm's way in terms of crime. They might be potential criminals, or they're active. And through the schools, through police, kind of identifying some of those youth who are on that bubble. Also, they're the group that will be deployed when violence occurs, so they can interrupt, so they can get into the space and try and stop that retaliation and that kind of behavior. So it's very intentional in terms of the skill sets that they're looking for in this regard. But we would encourage our community, anyone who thinks of someone who might fit the profile of someone who wants to be engaged with youth, who aren't really afraid of that element, but has that kind of character that they could mentor, yet they're a little bit rough on the edges. This isn't the typical person who's just going to say, oh, I don't want to be too close to that, I'm a little bit afraid. So they're not the scary type. But we want to have folks who can really get in, not be afraid, but engage with folks in sometimes some places that are not exactly comfortable for everyone. And it is a unique skill set. They need to be able to understand how criminals behave somewhat, and they need to understand how to turn people around and get them back into the right space. So anyone you can think of, and again, we're careful with even how we title it, because we don't want people to disqualify themselves. Someone might see the title, a violence interrupter, that's not me. So again, you can contact the Lorain County Urban League. You can contact our office to get that information. Their phone number, if anyone's listening, is 323-3364. Miss Angela Lee is the person who is coordinating all these things in the Urban League. And you can reach her at alee@lcul.org. Again, that's alee@lcul.org. I'm really excited about this. We've been talking about this program for a while, and it's finally up and moving, getting some legs underneath it. And as you all hear every day, it's very timely. There's lots of gun violence and other violence going on in our community. And so this is one of the anecdotes, one of the ways in which we will try to curb that violence and reduce that. Any questions I would gladly entertain.
Mr. Serra?
Through you, Mr. President. So we had this conversation a little bit ago when I was speaking with the mayor, and right now I'm not sure that that's the right name for it. They're not responding to a shootout when the police department is actually doing that part of it. They're following up through the investigative part of it, correct?
Absolutely. Yes, sir, and if I could, so.
Yeah, they're not interrupting the violence.
No, they're not doing the work of law enforcement.
Right.
Our law enforcement is dealing with that. They will work in some regards with law enforcement. They're not out there being vigilantes. They're not taking the law into their own hands. They're not behaving in that manner. What they do is, let's say, for example, a shooting takes place or there's a violent crime. And oftentimes what happens is we can be looking at social media sites or other things or talking to folks, and we know there's going to be some retaliation. So they engage with those perpetrators, they engage with those potential active folks to try to interrupt the retaliation. Or sometimes I've been in situations where there's a gunshot victim brought to the hospital. It's amazing what's going on at the hospital, in the lobby, and outside the hospital. And having folks who are on the scene with ears, listening, talking to folks, talking to the people in the neighborhood. Oftentimes we'll have 5, 6, 10 different witnesses, but yet no one saw anything going on. These individuals will have that credibility that they should be able to gather information, share that information with law enforcement to help them advance, but more importantly, sometimes stop that retaliation that could take place so that additional violence doesn't take place. So they are not doing the job of police. They are not being deployed by the police to the 911, and they're going to the scene of the crime. That's not their role.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Ms. Davis?
Chair, could you repeat their phone number again?
Yes, ma'am. It's a phone number for the Lorain County Urban League. It is 440-323-3364.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Williams. City Engineer, Ms. McKillips.
Good evening, through you, Mr. President. Just one quick update. Next week, the construction of our multi-purpose path on East Broad Street should begin, weather permitting. This section of the path between Prospect to the hospital will be completed, again, weather permitting, yet this year. The remaining portion will likely be next year. I just wanted to bring that news to the group. That's all I have this evening.
Mayor Whitfield?
Through you, Council President. One of the things that I wanted maybe the director to maybe speak to if there's questions, was something that's come up a lot from the residents is, why is there so much going on right now at this moment? And could we have avoided having all of these orange barrels right now? So one of the examples I want to give is Cleveland Street. So we recognize that, hey, there's a lot going on in the city right now. To have another street closed down is going to be a headache. So we reached out, hey, ODOT, can we adjust this? Their comment was, if you want this money, you're going to do the street right now. And so it was a matter of $7 million or whatever, giving back and saying, no, we'll wait, or we stick it out and get it through this year. So I think that's important for the residents to know, because I get as frustrated as you all do with, all these detours. But sometimes that's just how the grant funding works. If you want the money now, you kind of strike while the iron's hot. So I apologize for all the orange barrels. I think Director McKillips is doing a great job in terms of communication. Make sure you sign up for the emails that she sends out. And I apologize for any inconvenience.
Good. Any other questions for Ms. McKillips? Mr. Lippian?
Through you, Mr. President. Madam Engineer, do you have an update on the sidewalk program?
The trees, there's, I believe, 4 trees that need to come down. Those should be coming down either this week or next week. And then following that, the concrete work will take place.
So it is being initiated?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. McKillips? Thank you, Ms. McKillips. Chief Building Official, Mr. Farkas. Any questions for Mr. Farkas? Wastewater, Ms. Stefik. Questions? Ooh. Community Development, Ms. Scott.
Good evening. I would just like to remind council and the public that the CDBG 2024 action plan is available for public comment and viewing starting today. And that comment period will run for the next 30 days. So we encourage everybody to take a look at that draft plan and send any comments to the Community Development Department. And at that time, we will go ahead and report out back to Council Committee at the end of November.
Any questions for Ms. Scott? Thank you, Ms. Scott. I think that's everybody. President's referrals and remonstrances, there are none. Petitions and remonstrances from the lobby.
We have one, Matt Van Wormer, 235 Dennison Avenue, representing Embrace Your Beauty Confidence Studio, LLC, subject business development and growth, excuse me.
Mr. Van Wormer, please state your name and address for the record.
Matthew Van Wormer, 235 Dennison Avenue, Elyria, Ohio. Good evening. Elyria is home to hundreds of businesses, both large and small. And as we look to the future of Elyria, we have to see business growth as a cornerstone to our progress as a city. Unfortunately, it seems that several businesses are meeting roadblock after roadblock when they are ready to grow and expand their business. I speak tonight representing one of those business owners, Rachel Horvat. Rachel owns Embrace Your Beauty Confidence Studio at 612 Prospect Street in Elyria. She's been renting a space where the landlord has been less than attentive, and that, combined with the growth of her client base and service offerings, allowed her to sign a lease at a new location where she would be able to conduct a build-out that would suit the needs of her business and the independent contractors that use the space with her. Starting in April of this year, Rachel was in contact with multiple members of the building department to ensure that zoning was correct for what she needed to do. She also spoke with city licensed contractors who were trying to help guide her through the process. The building department let her know which permits would be required, told her they would need layout drawings of the floor plan, and for an inspection to be scheduled. Rachel specifically asked if these were architectural drawings that were being requested, and she was told no. A fee was paid for a special inspection, and in a meeting with city officials at the unit she was going to rent, she was told that everything she had done so far, per instructions from the building department, were wrong. Additionally, she was told that new drawings by a licensed architect were in fact required. Does anyone have an idea of how much these types of drawings can run? These specific drawings would have run Rachel anywhere between $5,500 and $6,000. Small business owners working to grow their businesses don't often have that kind of money laying around, and Rachel didn't include it in the finance package she put together for the build-out of the space. Because of all this, Rachel was forced to terminate the lease at a cost of $3,000 and to start looking for a new location that meets her needs. She had wanted to stay within the city of Elyria, but now she's not so sure. I've heard similar stories to Rachel's from dozens of business owners in Elyria. There are contractors who are avoiding taking jobs within the city because they don't want to deal with the hassle. I'm not here to accuse the building department of doing anything wrong, let me be clear. But I can see that there are things that can be done to make things easier and more efficient for business owners to run their businesses. Attached to my statement here are Rachel's full statement as well as the emails between Rachel and the building department. If this is something that's being done to do things by the book, we need to take a look at the book. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van Wormer.
That's all the petitions from the lobby.
Petitions and remonstrances from council members.
We have one, Councilman Lippian, safety update and Ward 1 issues.
Andrew Lippian, 614 Garford Ave, Elyria, Ohio. Thank you for speaking to that. I've heard that from many business owners as well. It's been a concern of mine, and I have definitely been thankful that the building department responded to concerns related to Friendly's building and that got pushed forward. So thank you, Mr. Farkas, for your department responding to that. It takes some pressure. You can't be afraid to have the confrontational conversation and apply a little pressure. And often when more than one person comes together, something can happen. None of us can do it alone. It takes a team. We can do it together. And that is how we're responding to the grave issue of safety and shootings in Ward 1. None of us want to live in a community where this is happening. I've been awoken by these sounds, thought they were fireworks, found out they weren't. My kids are a little too close for comfort to those noises. So what are we going to do about it? Well, we had a meeting at the Utilities Committee, a robust conversation to be sure. That turned into a follow-up meeting that we had with the mayor. The ball is rolling on that. We will have more meetings going forward as we secure a plan. When I'm looking at this, though, I'm also looking at places like Williams Street. A lot of parts of Elyria feel forgotten. There are homeless members that are living on the opposite side of the tracks, feeling equally forgotten. I asked Neighborhood Alliance to go check on them and get them attached to resources. We have a resident here, Tiffany Reedy, who has given us a Let's Help the Homeless, donate to fill blessing boxes. You can drop these off at 113 Williams Street. And this blessing box, I think, will be very good, not just for the homeless, but for anybody that needs them. And we also have to talk about the brownfields in that area, but there's an Amtrak grant currently that I want us all to think about that's looking at refurbishing the train stations all the way from Cleveland to Chicago and that whole corridor. And they're asking for urgent letters of support. So I'm going to send those letters out to council members tonight. The template is built. It should be very easy to lend a letterhead. I'd like to see everybody apply for that grant because the Amtrak station we have in Ward 1 in Elyria is basically a train stop. It is not a train station. People are doing drugs in the booth. They can't go anywhere because there's no bathrooms, and the train loads up at 3:50 in the morning. I know I've ridden it several times. We have to do something about it. Let's write that letter. Let's do it together. I really think we also need to partner with landlords. We have to have the police, and I know they're already doing a lot of this, but some of the first line of defense has to be contacting those landlords. When we had that shooting in Cornell, the landlords were lucky they found out about it. So we have to contact them and let them know, because often the landlords want to know, and sometimes they want to evict, and we have to inform them. So we are currently on the safety and shooting issue, doing a robust review of EPD recruitment and retention. We're looking at violence interrupters, anti-violence programs, and other measures. These are grave matters that have been creeping in our city for a long time. Let's put a stop to it. Let's put a stop to it together. Let's put the politics aside and make it happen as a community before it's too late. Thank you.
That's all the petitions from the council members.
Special committees,
There are none.
resolutions first reading.
Sponsored by Finance. A resolution approving a list submitted by the Safety Service Director for the collection of delinquent inactive utility accounts and directing the Clerk of Council to certify said accounts to the Lorraine County Auditor.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this resolution be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Mr. Schneider. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Resolution 2023-29. Sponsored by Finance. A resolution approving a list of properties for the collection of emergency temporary repair costs and directing the Clerk of Council to certify said cost to Lorraine County Auditor.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this resolution be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Mr. Schneider. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Resolution 2023-30. Sponsored by Finance. A resolution finding that the city has unfit for municipal use certain city property.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this resolution be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Resolution 2023-31. That's all resolutions first reading.
Resolutions second reading.
There are none.
Resolutions third reading.
There are none.
Ordinances first reading.
Sponsored by Finance. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Safety Service of the City of Elyria to dispose of, by the best means possible, city property that is unfit for municipal use.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-141. Sponsored by Community Development and Finance. An ordinance authorizing the City of Elyria to reduce the Community Housing Impact and Preservation CHIP Program loan balance of Andrea Hall, Elyria, Ohio.
Ms. Mitchell.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question?
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-142. Sponsored by Community Development and Finance. An ordinance approving the application of the Venue Church, Inc. for improvements at 200 East Avenue, Elyria, pursuant to the Downtown Facade Improvement Program created by Ordinance 2019-19.
Ms. Mitchell.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Mr. Snyder. Is there any further discussion?
Question?
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-143. Sponsored by Finance and Utilities. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the 2024 emergency sanitary and storm sewer repairs and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Mitchell. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-144. Sponsored by Finance and Utilities. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to submit an application for and accept, if offered, a Transportation for Livable Communities Initiative, TLCI grant, said funding to be for City of Elyria wayfunding signature project and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Mr. Snyder. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-145. Sponsored by Finance and Utilities. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a professional service agreement with Black & Veatch Management Consulting LLC for professional services pertaining to the water treatment plant improvements and upgrades and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second by Ms. Mitchell. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-146. Sponsored by Finance and Utilities. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to submit an application to the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, ODNR, a grant through the Land and Water Conservation Fund Program for the Parks and Recreation Department and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Mitchell. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-147. Sponsored by Finance and Utilities. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract to purchase a leaf vac truck for the sanitation department through the Ohio State Purchasing Program or equivalent program and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Mitchell. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-148. Sponsored by Finance and Utilities. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract to purchase a dump truck through the Ohio State Purchasing Program or equivalent program and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Mitchell. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-149. Sponsored by Finance and Utilities. An ordinance amending ordinance number 2023-8 to permit the purchase of an alternative type of truck for the wastewater pollution control plant and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Mitchell. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2023-150. Sponsored by Finance and Utilities. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a change order number 1 with the Jadco Construction Services, Inc. for the primary settling tanks number 3 and number 4 concrete repairs project at the wastewater pollution control plant and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Mitchell. Is there further any discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 23-151. That's all ordinances first reading.
Ordinances second reading.
There are none.
Ordinances third reading.
There are none.
Committee calls.
Community Development requests the law director, safety service director, building inspector, and engineer. Dates here. Oh, there's none. Oh, you know, there's no referrals, so there's no
Right.
meetings. That was
You were
easy.
just practicing, I get it.
Thank you. That was a test for me, right?
The test. Miscellaneous unfinished business. Mr. Lippian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention one more item around safety in Ward 1. On Lexington, for about the last year plus, actually several years, there have been issues around or near the bistro. And I want to credit Chief Pelko with working with Parker Hannafin to get no parking signs put up. And now they are constructing a black metal fence around the building where issues were taking place at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., bottle rockets being fired off in the direction of houses, loud music being played at night, fights, cars crashing into each other. Very bad stuff. And it seems to have been abated for now. And this would be going on at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. I went out at 2 a.m. personally and saw it. And I'm just thankful that the chief stepped up and took care of it. And I just want to make sure that I'm communicating this to residents in the community because a lot of the things that we do, people don't know. So kudos to you, Chief, for helping solve that problem on Lexington. I hope we're done with it. I haven't been getting the 2 a.m. phone calls, so that's a positive thing. Thank you.
Mr. Oswald.
Through you, Mr. President, I want to put a shout out to the IT department because nobody could be more happy than me. So I wear these goofy things so I can hear everybody speak at the meeting. Everybody now knows how I feel when I don't have these. So I want to thank you very much. It was a great meeting. Thank you, Mr. President.
Very good. Anybody else? If not, Ms. Mitchell?
Mr. President,
Wait,
seeing none.
Mr. President, hold on. Oh, we do have a referral for strategic planning for the first meeting in November. I believe it's November 5th.
Okay.
So all items referred, so. November 6th, excuse me.
November 6th, okay.
That's all.
Ms. Mitchell?
Mr. President, seeing no other business, I'll make a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Second by Mr. Sarah. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Meeting adjourned.
That's probably what, sometimes you gotta rewrite them.